Hello, my name is Kat and I am a teaching artist at the Edna Arts Center. What we're going to be learning is a watercolor desert landscape, and what we're going to cover is going over how to create a background, middle ground, and foreground, and we'll also go over the key techniques of a watercolor painting, and I will show you the basics. Alright, so let's go ahead and get our materials out for this watercolor lesson. And what you're going to be using is going to be the large sheet of paper for your watercolor painting. It's going to be a lot more like sturdy, it's going to be a lot more thicker. So go ahead and get that paper out. You want it to be nice and flat on your table, and you want to make sure that the table that you're using to paint watercolor is waterproof. So if you're using like a wooden table, you don't want any water to get on it, make sure you have like a barrier underneath that you can use to make sure that it's not going to ruin your table, or if you have like, a plastic type of material. Yeah, so just make sure your table's nice and ready for your watercolor painting. As you can see on my table, I have it nice and taped down. What's helpful about having the watercolor paper taped down is that it's not going to curl up when you add your paint and your water. Otherwise it's going to get very mushy, and it's going to be a really hard time for you to paint when the surface is not flat. So go ahead and get some tape down, and if you don't have masking tape, it's okay. Just be ready for when your paper is going to curl up. You can always take a pause when your paper does curl up and just let it dry. And another thing that's helpful too is adding books on top of your watercolor paper so it stays flat, after you do an initial first layer of paint. Okay, and then that's for the paper. Now for your materials, you're going to have your kneaded eraser, and the kneaded eraser is very nice because you can erase little small parts to your drawing. You're going to have your pencil, the brush, your watercolor paints, a cup of water, and then you might also need a straight edge or a ruler just to segment off this large piece of paper. I understand that this watercolor painting is quite large, so if you feel like you're not ready for such a large work, you can always just scale it down, break it off if you don't want to use this size. All right, great. So I'm gonna go ahead and start segmenting, cutting off some of my paper. So I'm just gonna draw a straight line because I don't wanna use the full sheet of paper. So I'm just gonna cut off a little bit, and then probably at the bottom I'm gonna also cut off a little bit. So I'm just gonna make sure my ruler or straight edge is nice and straight. And I am just trying to understand the size in which I can work. Not everyone can work in a large size, so whatever is comfortable to you. If you want to make it, smaller, that's totally fine. I forgot to mention this, but my painting is going to be vertical, so we're really doing a long dimension of our painting. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to actually draw the mountains. So the way I'm going to draw that is I'm going to go ahead and start from the top section of my drawing. Again, our paper is really nice and long, so I'm going to use this initial third of the sheet within the rectangle that I have created. And my mountains, they're going to just be very simple with desert landscapes, especially here in Arizona. We don't have really large mountains, so they can be just nice and flat, just to create some type of composition. I am making my mountains elevated, so first I have the small one that's nice and short. I'm just kind of sketching very lightly to make the first small mountain, and then I'm going to do the second mountain. It's going to be nice and almost flat as well, but it's going to be a little bit higher than the first. And then I'm going to have a third mountain that's going to be a little bit larger. So that way when we have our composition. It looks nice as it goes gradual with the mountains. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do another straight line. You can, freestyle it, or if you want to use your straight edge, up to you. I'm probably just going to use my straight edge. And just cut across. So now that I have this nice background of mountains. I have my middle ground, which is like the middle distance from us. And I'm going to start drawing what's going to be in the foreground. So the foreground is a subject that's going to be a lot closer to us, so it's going to be a lot larger. So I'm going to kind of work my way from like background, middle ground, and foreground. So you've already completed the background. And so if you want more to have your background to have more cacti, you can definitely do just like this long serraro. Does not have to be perfect. And what's nice about having things in the background is that it does not have to be super detailed. So I'm really just creating like a nice long popsicle stick almost. It's very lightly sketched. I'm not going for detail in this one. And maybe I'm gonna do another popsicle shape as well. And go ahead and do the same one on the other side. And I'm just creating different, cacti formations. Maybe this one's really high up. And you're gonna make your cacti not too big, because remember, if this is somewhat realistic, we're gonna have our objects that are farthest from us be a lot more small, not as realistic. So do not worry about how perfect they are. Does not matter. Okay, so I have like a few cacti in my mountains. And again, they're very lightly sketched. They're nothing fancy, just very generalized shapes. Think about popsicle sticks when you are creating your cacti. Okay, so this is my background. Now I'm going to go ahead and add what's in the middle ground. So the middle distance from where we are. In my cacti, I'm gonna try to create different shapes. We've done serraros for the background, but I'm gonna create like these oval shaped cacti. And I'm sure you've seen these. I don't know the exact name for them, but once you see them, you know. And I'm gonna just add these oval shapes. It does not matter like the direction. I'm just building these oval shapes on top of another. And they can really go in, any direction. And they're not too large either, but they're a lot larger from the cacti in the background. So they're starting to get larger because it's getting closer to us. So I'm gonna add a few more oval shaped cacti, and I'm just stacking them on top of each other. Again, it does not matter which direction they go. I feel like all cacti kind of just start meshing together. And it's very generalized. And again, make sure you're drawing very lightly, because when you start adding the watercolor, you don't want your pencil marks to be really dark and murky. Otherwise, it's going to affect the watercolor. Okay, so I've done like 2 of these oval-shaped cacti. So that's our middle ground. Now, the next step to our drawing is gonna be drawing a very large shape of the cacti. It's as if the cacti was like right in front of us and we can see the rest of the background beyond the horizon. So now I'm gonna just create them like even larger than life. So as you can see, like my shape compared to this and this one, like this one's probably like 5 times as large. So it's as if like we are doing a detail shot of the cacti close up and what that looks like with a background. So go ahead and keep doing these oval shapes. And they're gonna be just nice and large. Again, it's as if you were looking at, a close-up shot of the cacti. Gonna do another one right here. Okay, So that is my drawing, and make sure again you have like your background, you got, you know, 3 mountains, you have maybe some cacti if you want in your background for the mountains. And then you have like the middle ground cacti, so the one that is within the middle distance from us. And then you have like a very large shape cacti that's in front of us, as if we were looking at a detail of the cacti. You kind of want to start editing your drawing. So as I mentioned, when you are drawing, you might have really dark lines and you might have some sketch marks that you don't want anymore. So with watercolor painting, it's always good to keep, you know, your sketches nice and light, because once you start adding the watercolor, it's going to be very, you know, transparent, and you will see all of these, you know, pencil marks. So start erasing what you don't really need in your drawing. So as you can see, some of my cacti ovals are really dark, but I'm gonna go ahead and like just use my kneaded eraser. Maybe I'll like roll it a little bit more just to, you know, erase a lot more surface than like doing it in like a smaller detail. So go ahead and just brush off the marks with your eraser, your kneaded eraser, and take out what's not necessary to your drawing. So as you can see, the horizon line, there's some overlap with my horizon, or like the ground and my cacti. So I'm gonna try to erase this line that's cutting through my cacti. I don't want for people to see that the line's there with my cacti, so I'm gonna slowly erase it. And I'm probably gonna actually go back and redraw some of my oval shaped cacti.